Hey there, thanks for tuning into Duck Bricks. I'm Chris, and today we're going to be taking a look at every single January 1st Ninjago 2022 quote-unquote core wave launch set. This is the brand new release for the first half of the year. It's very exciting stuff. We'll be taking a look at all the sets, all the figures, and sharing my thoughts on the wave as a whole. And so without further ado, let's just jump right in and take a look.
So just in case you aren't aware of the story behind this year's latest Ninjago 2022 wave, these come from the quote-unquote core line of Ninjago sets, which are non-canon to the TV show and intended to just draw in new audiences and younger fans to the Ninjago story. As such, they feature purposefully generic villains in the form of snakes, as well as basically just general Ninjago type things like dragons, mechs, vehicles, a temple, and whatnot, all just generic Ninjago builds that are intended to just introduce kids to the world of Ninjago. If you want to learn all about the new core Ninjago system and exactly how it came to be, the LEGO designer for most of these sets in this wave actually did a lot of Q&A on Twitter. I made a full breakdown video summarizing all the key points on that, so feel free to check that out linked in the description below, where that basically summarizes all of the intents behind this wave and why it is the way it is. But without further ado, I think let's just jump right into the actual sets themselves, because I do want to focus heavily on the physical products. We're going to start off first with the minifigures of this wave and move on to these sets themselves. So zooming out here, we can take a look at the full collection of 2022 sets, and now moving inwards to the figures, you can see that we have different variants of each of the main ninja. Obviously, we get each of the Kai, Jay, Zayn, Kohl, Nia, and Lloyd. Thankfully, multiple copies are scattered throughout the sets. There isn't one character locked behind a specific set, except for Pixel, who is debuting for the first time since 2018 in minifigure form, debuting in one of the largest sets. Here you can see the absolutely massive Serpentine army that comes with as well, plus a few side characters, or I guess in this case, side robot in the form of the Woo Bot.
Alright, so taking a look at the minifigures here for the ninja side of things, we get a new version of Master Wu in a fully tan outfit, which isn't actually something he's worn since the Possession days. We also get a Woo Bot returning from Seabound, except this time it's using the new 2022 stud shooter. As well as, finally, one of the most exciting things about this wave is a new version of the Pixel figure, which was last seen in 2018. We also get 3 different copies, pretty much identical, of Kai, featuring the shoulder armor and everything, 2 hair pieces to go along with Kai. We also get 3 different copies of Jay, the only difference is in the accessories. One of these sets he has a golden piece of nunchucks, and the other ones he has silver. He also gets 2 of the island hair pieces. We get 2 Zayns. Unfortunately, only one of them has the shoulder armor, the other one does not come with it. Although, of course, if you get any of the other sets, you could just easily swap the armor piece off of one of the other duplicate figures if you wanted another armored up Zayn. He also comes with 1 hair piece. We get 2 versions of fully armored up Kohl. Unfortunately, no hair pieces included, except he does have 2 different weapons, 1 gold and 1 regular. We get 4 different Lloyds with 2 hair pieces. 3 out of the 4 have armor pieces, and 1 of them does not. As well as 3 surprising versions of Nia, who typically is one of the harder figures to get in sets, but thankfully they included 3 of her here, fully armored up, alongside 1 copy of the dual molded hairpiece. And that is basically all you're getting for the hero or ninja side of things on the minifigure end. Obviously, since as we discussed, this is a Ninjago core wave, it's not like they're really introducing any new characters here. We're just getting multiple copies of the ninja themselves. I want to start off by saying one of the things that I really like about this, and that's the fact that LEGO is actually including the hair pieces for each of the minifigures. This is something that they had been sporadically doing since 2014 with Rebooted. Sometimes we'd get hair pieces and sometimes we wouldn't. More often than not, we would not see hair pieces, so it's really nice to see these, especially because these are the special new dual molded elements introduced for the island last year, which means that they actually are extra special and tie in with the ninja color schemes. The big disappointing thing here, though, is that Kohl, for whatever reason, does not have his island hairpiece. I do not know why they decided not to include it. For whatever reason, it seems like the hairpiece inclusion is kind of random in the sets. For instance, Nia's hairpiece is included in the temple set, whereas Kohl comes in the same set and does not have a hairpiece. Kai is also included in the temple set, and he does have a hairpiece. So I don't exactly know what was going on with that. Why Kohl does not have his special piece in there feels a little bit like an omission to me to just not have his hairpiece for the wave, but everyone else does, so it's not too bad. And if you did own the 1 island set with the Kohl hairpiece, you could easily just pick that one up. Obviously, I think the highlight of the wave here, at least for me personally, and for a lot of Ninjago fans, is getting a Pixel minifigure. Again, the last time we got her was in 2018 with the Sons of Garmadon and Hunted waves. Given that she's become such a prominent character in Ninjago lore and the TV show, it makes total sense they'd finally do an updated minifigure for Pixel. In fact, as we take a look at this figure in particular, it's really awesome because it sports the Nia hairpiece from the Lego Ninjago movie, except this time recolored in silver, which is exactly what she has in the TV show. And she also has two different expressions, so turning the figure around, she has a bit of an angrier expression for maybe the Samurai X combat mode, but of course you can rotate it all the way around and have the more normal expression. This is a really interesting figure because it's specifically meant to evoke the 2018 Sons of Garmadon outfit, specifically the Samurai X outfit that she wore from that series, because that's probably the most recognizable version of the character, although of course details haven't updated. It is a brand new torso and leg printing, which does look really good, and one thing that I think is one of the standouts of this wave. I do hope we get more Pixel variants in the future, given that she's basically one of the core members of the Ninja team. I guess technically she's a side character, but she's pretty much in every single season now, so I'd say that elevates her a little bit more over just one of the other side characters. So really nice to see this as a figure. I didn't think we were ever going to get one in a while, and I am pleasantly surprised. Moving on, though, we can take a look at the Master Wu figure, which is also new. One of the things that I did really wish this figure actually did come with was the original Season 11 Master Wu head. They actually introduced a new head for Master Wu with Season 11, featuring a lot more detail with some side beard detailing, as well as a print on the back of the head for his ponytail, which unfortunately, for whatever reason, has not been included in this version. Instead, they are using the head that was actually introduced for Ninjago Legacy, which seems like an odd decision to me to bring that one back, but maybe that is only for the core sets here, and he probably will be getting something a little bit nicer for the actual other sets. However, that may just be because these are the Ninjago core sets and they wanted to use more of a classic Sensei Wu face, and they will be reverting back to the typical one we've seen since Season 11 for the future TV show sets. Master Wu himself has a really nice looking outfit. I'm a big fan of the way the tan blends in with the white. You can also see on his back he has the different ninja symbols adorned on the back there. It's a little bit hard to make out, but you can see just with the lighting there the different ninja symbols, which is a really nice detail. Really do like that actually is a feature on the Master Wu outfit, and overall I think it is generally a very nice looking outfit for Sensei Wu himself, despite it using the older style of head, which technically is no longer accurate to the TV show. Moving onwards, though, we can take a look at some of the minifigures. The Wu bot, again, is just the one we got in Seabound, so while it is nice to have, it's really not anything too special. And taking a look at the figures themselves, we will move on and take a look at each ninja. I've gone ahead and removed all of the additional armor elements and tried to display each figure in a different configuration just so you can see all the detailing on the characters. This outfit right here is basically your main ninja outfit. And one thing you're going to notice across pretty much all the ninja outfits along the core line is that they're very, very simplified. It is both a pro and a con, because it's good to get some simplistic style of detailing for the ninja robes, although to an extent, some details feel a little bit too simple. As you can see here on the front of the torso, it is very, very plain red, just some very light dark red lines just to differentiate it a little bit, but honestly most of it is just a plain red surface, with a little bit of keyed orange or flame yellowish orange sprinkled in. It's a very similar thing for the other ninja robes, which it does feel like maybe they took it too far in the simplistic direction, especially when you compare them alongside maybe some other figures from this exact wave, such as the Pixel figure here, which is using the level of detailing that appeared similar to the 2018 ninja robes. There's just a night and day difference between the level of detail here versus here, so while I do like the simplistic look and feel of these characters, it does feel maybe just a little bit too juniorized for me personally.
That being said, it's still really nice to get this very vibrant outfit for Kai. I love the flame yellowish orange alongside the red, and the dark orange pants, or the darker shade of orange, is actually pretty interesting as well. The brownish color definitely makes it stand out, although I'm not really quite sure what they're doing with the back symbols this time. It honestly feels like a bunch of just different scribbles to me for the circle piece on the back. It's kind of a design feature shared across all the ninja of this wave, and to be honest, I'm not really quite sure what to make of that. Otherwise, though, it's nice to get different versions of Kai. Obviously, the island-themed hair pieces with the actual bandanas are really cool to see, especially because the different color in the hair definitely reflects a lot more interesting things related to their color scheme, and with that, we can probably move on to the next character. So moving onwards, we can now take a look at the J minifigures. So in contrast to Kai, J here has a cool yellow or lightish yellow secondary color, which really does stand out, and again, I really do like the inclusion of these secondary, somewhat elemental colors being showcased on all the ninja robes. Again, the patterning on the robe itself is fairly simplistic. There's just a lot of plain blue on the torso with very clear and crisp lines, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. I just hope that the next season's actual suits will have a little bit more detail than this. The back of his shirt also features the same exact strange ninja symbol that's new for 2022, and here you can see the different minifigures in all their detail right here. I do like the inclusion of the sand blue legs. I think that goes really well with the color scheme and fits in well with the Kai figure, who also had a somewhat stranger tertiary color scheme for the legs. Moving onwards, we can now take a look at Zayn, and Zayn is actually one of the best figures of this wave because he actually does include a bit more detail on the torso there. He has the metallic shirt underneath exposed where you can see the chest plate as well as a bit of the reactor powering him, which is a really cool detail. I always love it when Zayn figures have this metallic armor detail to showcase the robotic exoskeleton underneath, so that's really interesting to see. He does share some similar design features with the other ninja, although this time the torso print actually is a little bit more detailed. One major complaint I do have that isn't really the fault of this wave is the headpiece in particular is pretty much fixed at a very angry expression. It's the headpiece that was introduced for the 2018 Sons of Garmadon wave, and unfortunately we haven't really gotten a new Zayn head outside of some spinners beyond that, so we're kind of stuck with this for the mainline sets, which just feels a little bit out of character to me. That being said, with the hood on, it really doesn't make a difference, and thankfully, we do have a smiling titanium Zayn head with the newer style, thanks to the Spinjitzu Burst figures. With that, we can move on to our next character. And with that, we have the Kohl figure. Kohl is using orange as the secondary color, as he often does in recent years, which looks very striking. It really does serve to add a good amount of pop and additional color to the generally dark colors of Kohl's rest of his suit, so it's really nice to see that. Again, you can see that exact same circular printing on the back of the torso there. They seem to really be uniting the characters under this one theme. The torso design's fairly similar to the rest of the ninja. There's a lot of simplistic blacks on the shirt, but also this one thankfully does have some nice inner detail in the form of the chainmail-esque armor underneath in the darker brown color. One thing that I didn't actually mention that I really like is the inclusion of the different colored swords for each of the ninja, which correspond with their head wraps, which I just think is a really cool detail. And just in case you wanted to see how it looks like, I have taken the Island Kohl hairpiece, which basically seems to be the main hairpieces they're using going forwards, and placed it on the 2022 Kohl figure. Again, this hairpiece is not included in any of the 2022 sets. I just thought it would be kind of interesting to take a look at how well this goes along with the color scheme, especially with the orange highlights. I just think it looks really good, and do wish that LEGO included this in the more recent sets. But with that, let's take a look at some of the Lloyd figures. You get 4 of him if you buy every single LEGO set across the wave, so quite a high variety as usual, but this one does have a pretty nice color scheme mixing the greens, dark greens, and the limes, which continue the darker coloration of the pants for the ninja of this line. This one does have quite a few more details than some of the other figures, particularly with the dragon scales in lime across the front and back. It's really cool to see the suggestion of the legendary dragon head on the back of the torso there, and it's always interesting seeing a very asymmetrical color scheme for the Lloyd figure himself. It does match up very well with the hair, and this is probably one of the better produced figures of the entire wave, specifically because it actually does have a good amount of detail while still keeping within the style of the other ninja. With that, let's take a look at the final member of the team. We've got Nia, the Master of Water here. Thankfully, we get 3 different copies of the Nia figure. Oftentimes with Ninjago, Nia is locked towards either single sets or the most expensive sets, so it's really nice to actually see her appear multiple times across the wave. I really am a big fan of the color scheme here using the bright azure alongside the gunmetal gray. I think it provides a really great contrast, and you can see the wave ripple pattern across the front and back of the torso, which looks absolutely incredible. Obviously, there are some simplistic detailing with the plain gunmetal gray being shown on the back of the torso there, but honestly, for the most part, this is just a really impressive figure, and getting that fantastic dual molded hair with headband piece is an extra bonus. All in all, this is probably one of my favorite minifigs out of the wave. This one and the Lloyd and Zayn figures are quite good, and now it's time to take a look at the entire Ninja minifigure wave as a whole. So zooming out here, we can take a look at every single member of the team. You've also got the Woobot thrown in, which again is recurring from Seabound. Starting off here, we have the excellent Pixel minifigure, who does feel like she belongs in a slightly different category of design principles than the other 6 ninja, but still fits in with the rest of the team. And then of course you have all of these 6 core ninja looking fantastic in their new suits. Again, love these secondary colors and the fact that they sport secondary colored highlight swords, which does look really great. I'm glad they actually chose to recolor some of the swords here, which is really cool to actually get these swords in these secondary colors for the most part. The Master Wu figure, again, I do wish he was using the Season 11 headpiece, but for the most part I am pretty happy with it, and while these designs are a lot more simplistic than we're normally used to, I am fairly happy with these as more vanilla generic designs for the ninja, and wouldn't mind it if these became the quote-unquote template for the basic suits before the ninja gear up for season-specific adventures. Of course, we do also have to talk about the villains. Now, these villains seem to be some sort of a technology-themed Serpentine. They do kind of have similar color schemes to some of the Constricti, but I don't think they're officially called Constricti. They're really just called the Boa Destructors or the Boa Commanders or whatnot. There's just a lot of very strange generic names being used for the Serpentine here, and again, these are not officially canon. And as far as we can tell from the shorts that already were released in conjunction with this wave, these enemies do not even really appear, so I don't really necessarily know if these will ever show up in the show itself. These seem to be just some sort of generic villain created for the Ninjago wave in general, which makes sense because snakes are typically associated with the Ninjago enemies. Rotating around some of the figures to show the back printing, this one right here is probably one of my favorites because it recolors both the fists and the Praetorian Guard armor in gunmetal gray, which is really nice. Obviously you get 2 different recolors of the classic Pyro Whipper Snakehead from 2019, which, yeah, a lot of people have complained that we are getting these again after just getting them recolored for the Seabound wave, but to be honest, it doesn't really matter to me too much because for a core Ninjago wave that's supposed to focus on generic villains, these absolutely fit the bill. Although I do question why they didn't just choose to go with, say, the pre-existing legacy villains, maybe even save some of the recoloring of the mold costs with that, because if this is just supposed to be a callback to classic Ninjago designs, I don't necessarily see why they couldn't have just reused the legacy villains or even made some more new legacy villains instead of just creating this brand new faction which probably will never actually be prominent in the show. That being said, they do have their own unique aesthetic mixing in teal with the orange and gunmetal and are very interesting to see. But with that, we can now move on to the actual sets themselves. And starting off, we have this set right here. This is set number 71757, Lloyd's Ninja Mech, retailing for $10 US. And this is a fairly controversial one, but to be honest, it really isn't made for the hardcore fans. After all, this is a 4+ set, which means it's specifically aimed at the younger kids, and basically just one step above Duplo. So while a lot of people have complained about the look and feel of the mech, frankly, the mech isn't really made for you. It's made for just younger kids to get interested in Ninjago, and to be honest, it's not too bad. I think this is a lot better than the previous 4+ mech we got, which was Jay's Electro Mech, because thankfully, they are using the new SCCBS limbs on the upper arms there, which but still always look better than the previous limbs that we got on the 4+ Jay's Electromech, which were basically just T-posing straight blocks. This one does have some waist articulation, which is always fun to see. Again, I do like the dual swords. You can actually get this in some fun poses. You can really get this up in a walking pose like so, with the fixed knees like that, and again, for a 4+ product, it does make sense to just have it like this. It also seems that 4+ products do not actually allow them to put armor on the minifigures, which is unfortunate. This is the one version of Lloyd that does not have any armor on him because he is in a 4+ set, but it is what it is, and it does make sense that maybe they felt that kids would not be able to actually figure out how to put on these small armor pieces correctly. Obviously, the back of the set is very plain, really just a plain block there, and again, this is probably one of the most juniorized Ninjago mechs you're going to see, but again, it really isn't made for you. And just for comparison, this is the Lloyd minifigure with the shoulder armor. While I do wish that it did include the shoulder armor in this set, I understand that they didn't want to do that for the 4+ build itself. But moving onwards, we have set number 71761. This is Zayn's Power Up Mech Evo, which thankfully is not in the 4+ range, which retails for $10 US. As a quick recap of the previous video I did that the LEGO designer used to explain this new system, the EVO line of sets is basically the new line of Ninjago, which is intended to allow kids to upgrade their sets as they progress with the build process. For instance, with this one, you add on different armor pieces, the gold pieces, and the spinning saw blade. This set also introduces the brand new SCCBS system, aka the System Character and Creature Building System, which basically is the next evolution of what a Bionicle-like figure could look like for the 5+ age range. Obviously, this does not have knees or elbows because LEGO's guidelines state that for a 5+ set, you cannot actually have knees or elbows because they have to be placed firmly on the ground with one hit. AKA, kids should not be having to mess with the knees in order to make this stand up. If you want to learn more about LEGO's policy on this, again, refer to the other video in the description below. As you can see here, this set fits the Zayn minifigure pretty well. It's basically just a scaled up version of Zayn, which is a pretty fun build to get. I actually am a big fan of the color scheme here, using the azure colors alongside the gold and the white. It just makes for a really cool color scheme, pun intended. And of course, as you can see here, you can actually easily remove the different armor pieces to downgrade this from the fully EVO mode down to the more standard companion mode for the mech here. It really is a very simple process to remove the armor pieces like so, just to get it stripped down to the most base mech, which again is supposed to be the stage 1 of the mech until you actually add on the armor pieces and the weapons. The set, unfortunately, despite being a mainline 5+ set, does not include an armor piece for Zayn, which means that there technically is only one armored up Zayn minifigure in the entire 2022 wave. Although, of course, if you get any of the other sets, you could easily just steal one of the armor pieces from one of the other duplicate ninja and put it on the Zayn figure. So if you wanted to, you could have two. For whatever reason, they chose not to include the armor piece here, presumably because he does technically fit in the mech better, although honestly, if we took the Zayn with the armor piece, you can clearly see that he does fit in just fine with the mech, maybe leaning forwards a little bit, and later on in this video, you will see Kai's mech, which is built with the same exact system, including a Kai minifigure with an armor piece on one of the larger sets. So, kind of feels like LEGO just choosing to make a slightly worse variant of the figure for a cheaper set, which would encourage people to buy the larger ones, which is kind of unfortunate, but it is something LEGO is prone to do, and really that's my only major complaint with the set. I actually am a lot happier with these EVO sets than I anticipated. They do form really nice buildable characters, and again, if you kind of look at it, these have basically the same amount of articulation as the original Toamata did from 2001. No knees, no elbows, but you can move around the hands, the feet, the legs, the arms, and of course the figure can be moved around inside. But with that, we can move on to our next Ninjago EVO set, this time retailing for $20. This is set number 71760, Jay's Thunder Dragon EVO, featuring Jay with both the head wrap and hair pieces, as well as some sort of serpentine with a flying mechanism strapped to his back. Obviously, the star of the show here is the dragon itself, which introduces somewhat of a new building system for simple Ninjago Dragons, one that definitely has its pros and its cons. You see, this one obviously is a very simplified form of a dragon. It's got a brand new top piece of the head, which is really nicely dual molded, although it does feel a little bit juniorized to me. A very simple connection, which allows you to move the head up and down and very slightly side to side, but really not too much. It's introducing a brand new clip element to actually move the jaw as well, which previously would have been accomplished with just the standard battle droid arms. You can see the legs here use the same legs from the mech pieces from the Ninjago EVO mechs. So really just the fixed articulation on the legs here as well. And also, this one basically just takes use of the mixel joints to really just move everything around. It essentially is just a very similar build to the other mechs, except this time it is in the form of a dragon. To be honest, this is probably one of my least favorite sets of the wave. It just feels really blocky and rigid to me. The wings are kind of mounted at strange angles, and to be honest, this one just doesn't appeal to me too much, even with the color scheme, with the cool light yellow as well as the azure being what could have been a very interesting color scheme, but one that really isn't distributed all too well across the body, and also one that feels very juniorized and just feels more like a toy rather than an actual Ninjago dragon, which they've done small-scale dragons before that look really good. This one just feels like a bit of a toy. Obviously, you can see that it specifically is made to be downscaled to this companion mode where it has a shorter body, no wings, no tail, basically just a basic dragon that's four-legged, which is a little bit cute. I can kind of see the appeal of this, but again, doesn't really feel all too ferocious to me as a dragon warrior. Just feels like something very simple and a very juniorized LEGO build overall. I will acknowledge, however, that again, I am definitely not the target market for sets like these. The entire fundamental wave behind this line is to draw in new and younger fans who do not really know too much about Ninjago but want the basic Ninjago building experience. And so with that in mind, I think this set and pretty much all the other EVO sets definitely very much succeed in what they're trying to do. Create the simplest, most easily consumable new Ninjago offerings to introduce younger fans to the world of Ninjago. And for that, I understand what they're doing. I'm fine with it. I just am certainly very excited for the next actual TV show wave because this set in particular is really where some of the downgrades of the EVO design really actually start to show. We again got fantastic $20 Ninjago Dragons just a couple of years ago with Season 13. This one really does feel very, very simplified, which again is not really a problem that some of the mechs have because the mechs themselves do actually look pretty cool and actually use a lot of the prefab pieces to go along well. This just feels like a very simplified, downscaled dragon. But with that, we can now move on to our next Ninjago EVO set, which thankfully is at a slightly higher price point, so it is a little bit better than this dragon, and honestly, I think is a major improvement over the current dragon here, which again, is only a $20 set, which does feel like you are getting a good value for your price, but is very, very simplified. And that next set is the set number 71762. This is Kai's Fire Dragon EVO. It retails for $30 US with 204 pieces. This one comes with two different Serpentine antagonists, one wearing a very fully fledged jetpack with teal wings. Those are actually the Mystica wings from Bionicle, which is really nice to see them being returned in a new color here. They also had it in that color for the island sets. And we also get another Serpentine controlling a drone of some sort to go against the dragon. Now this dragon in particular is one that I'm actually pretty happy with. Despite using basically the same exact EVO frame as the previous one, this one actually has a lot of really interesting armor pieces and has a much more impressive and larger wingspan, which is something I am a big fan of. One thing I really do like about this figure is that it actually adds a lot of different armor pieces in the form of the gold armor add-ons for the sides of the legs, which really do wonders in terms of breaking up the monotony of the color scheme and adding a lot more texture and detail to the dragon itself. That being said, one major con of the dragon is that, as you can see here, the way the mixel joints are mounted mean you can't really move the back legs front or back, just kind of splay them out, which is kind of unfortunate. I do just wish they switched around the joints there. I really don't see why they didn't, because they could have easily just swapped those around. Maybe they did it for stability, but it really didn't need it. And also, as you can see here, the wings are not mounted on ball joints. They are mounted on fixed rotation joints, which means they are always forever forced forwards in this canted angle, which does feel very awkward to me, doesn't really feel right in flight, but obviously that's something you could easily fix by just mounting them on ball joints instead of just the fixed axle they're on. The head itself, while the lower jaw does feel very simplified for what you're getting, I think it definitely is an improvement over the previous dragon because at least they use the upper headpiece, which is a little bit more impressive. Now to downgrade this or upgrade this to the EVO form, you basically just remove or add on every single gold element. So everything gold that's here, including the gold ingots on the sides of the legs, can be removed and added on. I will not go through the process of doing that all because it is a pretty annoying process, but as you can see here, you can also reduce the length of the body for the EVO mechanism itself to make it a little bit shorter and make it seem a little less aggressive and more like just a standard wildlife creature. The wings actually, I think, are done really well. And I'm actually pretty happy with the design of these wing elements. You see, we had very similar wing elements for the Legends of Chima buildable figures all the way back in 2014 and 2015, and those were fairly good on their own, but these ones definitely take it to the next level. And I do like how the wings have the Technic additions to really fit in with, say, the construction system of building Bionicle-like characters. Again, these wings are dual molded. We did get the gold and the transparent yellow back with the Jay's dragon, but I feel like the red wings with transparent orange just are a cooler piece to get for this dragon in particular, and feel like they have just some better applications in general. You can see the vertebrae of the wings stretching across the molded element, which looks really interesting to me. I'm a big fan of how that turned out, and again, you can add on both Bionicle and system pieces, as well as just kind of link up wings together to form all sorts of unique geometries. I, for one, would love to see what a talented mockist could do with many copies of this wing element, because there's a lot of potential here. Maybe you're not really using it to its full potential in the EVO sets, but I'd, again, love to see where LEGO would use this piece in the future and where mockists actually use multiple copies of this piece. But with that, we have summed up our look at this particular set, and now we can move on to one of the next sets. The next set we have is again another $30 USD set. This is set number 71763, Lloyd's Race Car Evo, and if it looks familiar, this is somewhat based off of the Ninja Nightcrawler from 2018, at least in terms of the color scheme as well as the overall look and feel of the build. It comes with an adorable little car for the Serpentine Warrior. Of course, the short-legged Serpentine is used here, as well as another mechanical Serpentine with flames mounted on his back, plus Lloyd with his hood and hairpiece and armor, which is very nice to get. The car itself obviously is fairly simplistic in its build, but it actually does look pretty good, save for one major detail. I am not a big fan of the massive spoiler in the back of the car when images first came out. I was really not a fan of how they did that. Again, this is literally in place specifically because they needed to have something being easily added on and removed for the Evo generation of the vehicles, which, to be honest, I absolutely prioritize look and feel over the different stages of the build, especially when you're just combining and adding on different pieces. If you want to see what it looks like, removing these pieces here is what the standard base form of the vehicle is. You basically just get rid of the spoiler in the back as well as all the different add-ons and the side armor pieces, which again just honestly makes the car feel unfinished to me. This just feels like a car that has not been completed, which I am not a big fan of. Again, the Evo mechanic or gimmick for all these sets is done a lot better for others. It literally asks you to take the windscreen off of this one, so it honestly just makes the model feel very unfinished. I am not a big fan of how the Evo gimmick worked out for this vehicle, and I honestly feel like it should have just been left as a standard vehicle. That being said, once you actually put all the pieces back on, it looks pretty good. I'm a big fan of the way the large stud shooters at the front look. I love the redesign for the new stud shooters. I think it just looks a lot cooler for 2022's redesign of the blasters themselves, and still works about as good as the older ones, so it's a win-win. Obviously, the use of the Evo Mech side armor pieces actually does look quite good on the side pieces of the car, and getting the back jet exhaust on the back of the car there is quite good as well. The only major complaint I have is just the massive out of place spoiler. You can see this one just really juts out of the back there, which kind of ruins the entire look and feel of the vehicle itself to me personally, but it's something that again could be easily modded. It is a Lego set after all, so if you want to make modifications yourselves, well, it's Lego. You can just go ahead and do it. Beyond that, there's nothing too much else I can say about this particular Ninjago vehicle, so it's time to now move on to our next set. Retailing for $50 US, the next set we have here is also another Ninja car, although this time it does come with an antagonist vehicle. This is set number 71776, Jay and Nia's Race Car Evo. It comes with the aforementioned Jay and Nia pair, no hairpieces though, as well as two different Serpentine opponents to fight, plus an entire Serpentine villain helicopter, which is one of the only villain vehicles of any substance of this wave, and is the largest villain vehicle. So let's just start off with that. I always love it when Ninjago does unique things for their villains, and I understand for this wave, out of all the waves out there, this was not the wave to focus on anything villain related because again, these are for the Ninjago core line, but honestly, I'm a big fan of how this helicopter came together, and I really like how it represents something completely new for Ninjago, which is some sort of a technological imbued snake. As you can see here, the cockpit itself uses the dish pieces, which are really good in conjunction with the new Evo armor piece, as well as the roll cage build on the top there. All in all, it just feels like a really solid cockpit, and reminds me of some of the older LEGO space cockpits, particularly the Blacktron 2 bubble cockpits, which are incredibly similar to how the final cockpit looks on the helicopter itself. It also has quite a decent mechanism for spinning up the rotor there. You just need to spin the gear up, and thankfully, there's not a lot of friction, so the blades really just get right up in there and spinning. So all in all, this is a good villain build. Again, not the wave to focus on villain builds, but I'm very happy with how this one turned out, and it definitely provides a pretty substantial threat against the ninja vehicles because thankfully, this actually is a pretty fair fight, unlike many of the other sets where there's a massive ninja vehicle and just a tiny snake one. This one actually is a pretty decent build, so I'm happy with it. It even has a bit of a control lever, so what's not to like about this villain helicopter? Moving on though, we can take a look at the actual focus of the set, which is Jay and Nia's car. Or should I say Jay's car with a little bit of a Nia add-on. Yeah, that is a little unfortunate here. Nia doesn't tend to get a lot of focus sets, and as you can see here, the only Nia piece out of this entire build is just this tiny piece on the top with the light azure. Everything else with the standard blue and cool yellow, that's all Jay. You have his lightning bolt symbol on the side. I don't see any water symbols on the side here. This is basically just Jay's race car with a bit of a Nia spoiler added on top. Thankfully though, this does actually seat both minifigures, because they took advantage of the Speed Champions mold for the 8 stud wide cars, which is a fantastic new mold. They actually are able to include the figures in here. The Speed Champions mold was really only introduced, I think, around 2020. It's been used really well for the Speed Champions cars, but this is one of the first times I've actually seen it crop up in Ninjago, and it works really well because you can see both characters fitting inside the vehicle next to each other, which is a great inclusion. Now, one thing I really do not like about this build is unfortunately the Nia part of it. As you can see here, her vehicle, if you can even call it that, just kind of sits awkwardly on the back. And if you want her to actually sit in her vehicle, she very awkwardly just sits on the top of the car. That cannot be safe. It literally is just some sort of a flying glider-like vehicle, although unfortunately there's no easy way to mount a figure. I honestly feel like that kind of build would have served much better as, say, something that could have been back mounted. You include a neck bracket for Nia and she could have mounted it on her back as glider wings. That probably would have turned out a lot better, but as it is right now, it really kind of ruins the look and feel of the car itself with the different shade of blue and the fact that it's kind of just slapped on there. One thing I do love is the fact that the windshield piece is actually angled backwards. That's a really interesting technique that gives the set a very unique look and feel for the aesthetics of the aerodynamics of the windscreen. It's not something they've done with that windscreen piece ever with LEGO before, so I really do appreciate it. They also have the new stud shooters, which can be retracted, which does look really cool. And again, it does have this very large bumper, which is another fact about the set that honestly I'm not the biggest fan of. The incredibly large bumper kind of throws me off, and there's no easy way to remove it, because even if you remove the large bumper, you still have this very awkward looking 2x3 plate just sticking out of the front. So just feels strange in general. You of course can remove the entire bumper itself, but it doesn't really feel like you're supposed to remove it. And all in all, this set is doing a lot of good things. It's probably my favorite ninja vehicle or car-based vehicle in the entire wave. It just feels like there's a lot of improvement that could be made, just little minor things that could have been tweaked or changed about the build, with the removal of the large front bumper, the removal of Nia's vehicle, or actually incorporating Nia into the build itself. All just minor things that could have made this build a lot better, because as it is right now, it's a really interesting car build until you get to these strange things that are kind of just tacked on. One thing I do actually like that arguably is kind of tacked on are the Sons of Garmadon blades on the back in gold. I just think those look cool. But of course, as you can see here, with all these strange and awkward things removed from the build, you can kind of see this being just a very fancy looking sports car that fits within the Speed Champions world, which is something I think is really cool and fits in very well with the Ninjago world while being a very cool looking, somewhat realistic sports car. Of course though, once you add on the Ninjago stuff, it kind of just takes away from the whole look and feel, and I do wish that there was a better balance struck between the two, because typically the Ninjago stuff is supposed to make a set look cooler, not the other way around. But with that, we have summed up my thoughts on this set, and we can now move on to our next set on this list. And coming up next, we have a set that thankfully is not a Ninjago Evo set. This is set number 71766, Lloyd's Legendary Dragon, retailing for $70 US. Now this is an absolutely fantastic dragon, and honestly one of my favorite Ninjago dragons that they've done basically ever. You see, this has a very unique color scheme, body shape, and build type which sets it apart from other Ninjago dragon builds, and also packs in a really fun function to boot. It comes with Lloyd with a hairpiece, and inexplicably Nia without a hairpiece. Not sure why he got one and she didn't. But moving on, you can see here that the dragon itself obviously is the star of the show, and boy is it one of the best. So let me explain what I mean. First of all, the color scheme is something that I feel is very unorthodox for a Lloyd-themed dragon. Instead of it being primarily sand green or different shades of green or dark green, they're doing something pretty radically different, having it have a dark blue underbelly, some azure highlights, and only the plain green being used for the top of the dragon, which may seem like a lot of colors and a lot of colors that don't fit Lloyd's color scheme, but as it is, right now when it all comes together, this is one of the most impressive and cohesive looking dragon builds we've seen in a while. Obviously, it helps that it has a very high price, which means that they actually were able to dedicate a lot of different pieces for the build itself, but I'm honestly just really impressed by how cohesive the color scheme looks, while still feeling very much like a Lloyd-focused set. The jaw in particular is very impressive to me. It uses the prefab dragon pieces, but really does feel like a realistic animal jaw, unlike the other Evo jaws, which basically just had very spindly connections to connect the upper and lower jaws. This one actually all comes together very well. And you can see here, pressing the lever on the back allows you to move the wings back and forth, which is a function we have seen somewhat similarly with stuff like the Ultra Dragon, but honestly something that's executed a lot better here because it uses the mixel joints for friction, which means that you're never actually going to have it flopping one way or the other. You can really just angle the wings however you like. Obviously though, this means you cannot unfortunately flap the wings up and down, so having the play feature like this definitely has some cons in terms of articulation. This set also introduces a brand new joint piece, but we're actually probably going to be putting out an entire video on all the new LEGO joints they introduced for large buildable figures this year, so I'll save my thoughts on the joint for that. You can also see a bit of a hint to some of the other joints here with the brand new redesign of the Bionicles/Hero Factory CCBS limb being used for the foot there. Another great thing I like about the tail is the fact that thankfully it is not one of the loose, completely frictionless swaying tails. They actually have it hooked up on mixel joints, which means you can actually angle the tail however you like. Zooming in on the detail on the jaw here, again, I'm just very impressed with how realistic this looks, even a bit of a tongue build inside the dragon jaw, and of course, as you can see here, it's using a lot of snot techniques, studs in the side techniques, as well as just different angled plates to really just have a very cohesive look for the dragon in general. And lastly, getting fabric elements for the wings is fantastic. I love it when Ninjago makes fabric dragon elements for wings. The vinyl pieces always felt a little bit cheap to me, so these really do feel very majestic, feels very much like a real living dragon in the Ninjago world with a very fun play feature to boot. But with that, we can have another set coming up on this list, which arguably has an even more interesting play feature. This is set number 71765, the Ninja Ultra Combo Mech, retailing for $90 US with over 1,100 pieces. So immediately you probably will notice that this is hiding a few secrets with the mech itself. And I kid you not, this is probably one of the most interesting mechs LEGO has ever done in terms of play, not even just for the line of Ninjago, but for any LEGO mech in general. So he's got two large upper arms, two lower arms, as well as some very large and stocky feet. And there's a lot of really interesting things packed in here. But first, let's take a look at some of the figures and the accessories included with the set itself. I'm gonna be honest, I do not know what this villain vehicle is supposed to be. It is some sort of a four-legged crawler. I don't really get what its design is supposed to evoke. The advertisements for the set show it shuffling awkwardly across the ground, which really doesn't feel right to me. It almost feels like they should have just done a standard Evo style mech, but maybe ran out of parts budget, so made this somewhat awkward crawling thing instead. It fits one of these snake villains, which you can see here. His head pops up perfectly fine. I just don't really know what to make of it. It's a very squat, awkward looking thing, and honestly, I don't really see this posing any sort of threat to the much larger combination mech in general. Maybe to some of these standalone vehicles, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. Again, I don't really know what this is supposed to be, so we can now move on to the other stuff included in this set. What is so cool about the set is that it includes copies of all of the original 4 Ninja. Kai, Jay, Zayn, and Kohl, the original ones from the pilot season, fully armored up. No hair pieces, but that's not a big deal. But now it's time to actually take a look at the massive Ninja Ultra Combination Mech itself. And in case the name wasn't a dead giveaway, there's a reason why this is the Ultra Combo Mech. But first, let's put in all the minifigures. You can see Kai is very much tucked away in the red section of the chest there. You actually cannot see him when the model is fully put together. He's really just tucked in very tightly. Jay's blue piece kind of just covers him completely. Jay himself has a place to sit on the back of the robot itself. Kind of an awkward seating arrangement, but he makes do. Kohl sits inside one of the arms. Thankfully, they all use the same windscreen piece to delineate exactly where to put the minifigures, although unfortunately, this particular windscreen mounted on the Kohl vehicle is very easy to accidentally knock off. Zayn also fits inside the leg of the vehicle itself, which you can see right here, placing him right in the leg. And you can also fit one of the Woobot minifigures in the other leg as well to make it be fully complete. Although, strangely enough, the product description, the animations, and the video advertisements for the set all show the Woobot as a villain, which is what they also did with the Seabound Wave, which I don't know what's going on with that. Anyways, you can take a look at the mech itself here with all of the ninja actually incorporated in these seats themselves. One thing that I'm actually pretty impressed by is how well they balance the different color schemes. Despite it comprising of all of the core ninja's color schemes, it actually comes together fairly well, and using gold as a unifying color was a really smart choice. Instead of trying to work in the ninja's secondary color schemes, which absolutely probably would have made this a bit of a mess with Kohl's orange, Kai's Keat orange, Jay's azure, as well as Zayn's light blue, they just chose to use the primary ninja colors as well as the gold sprinkled in, which I think works out really well. And as you can see here, Jay has an alternative seat on the back here with the windscreen actually made for him, although in this case he's just kind of staring up at the sky. The set also includes 2 of the banner pieces, which we haven't mentioned before, but the collectibles for this wave are the printed banners, and I actually really like this Optimus Prime looking style head. It just looks really menacing and cool for the ninja mech itself. Moving onwards, you can see the legs are very stocky, no knees obviously, but it does have a good amount of articulation scattered throughout. But again, this is the Ninja Ultra Combo Mech. So let's do some combination, or in this case, decombination. Uncombination? Let's see. Disassembly is probably the word I'm looking for. First off, you can detach the blue J vehicle, swap it on, form a jet. You can now remove the Kohl arms by pulling out the orange pieces on the back of the Kai mech here. This can be angled and rotated to a Kohl driller. The Kai mech itself can be separated from the Zayn vehicle. As you can see here, the legs fold open for a fully Kai mech, and then you get Zayn's snowplow or snowmobile right here. And these are all of the 4 different ninja vehicles. Now, to be completely honest, I think the designers did the best with what they could for the prompt, but there are some vehicles here that are clearly far superior to some of the others. Jay's jet here is very simplistic, but it's not too bad. It honestly just kind of reminds me of just a mid-level Nexo Knights LEGO set, which also incorporated a lot of transformation features like these, where a lot of times with Nexo Knights they sacrifice aesthetics in order to have a unique color scheme as well as a transformation feature, which is kind of something similar to what's going on here, but this one doesn't do it that bad. The bird/jet build here for Jay is not too bad. Obviously the wings are very simplistic and it kind of looks awkward to swoosh around, but I do actually like how they were able to actually hide the actual head for the mech fully inside the Jay jet. Really impressed by just how compact all this is, and honestly this is just really good engineering in general to fit all the details in. With that though, let's now move on to the next vehicle. Kohl's driller here unfortunately does not spin the drills when the wheels move, which is something we have grown used to from LEGO, but I understand given the size constraints that probably wasn't possible. This is a bit of an awkward build because it very clearly is hinged through the middle, and it's very easy to accidentally activate one of the hinges and push the wheels off to the side. The front of the vehicle is not too bad. It's basically just a twin drill vehicle. Again, feels like something I've seen out of Nexo Knights before. It's literally using the Nexo Knights wheels. That being said, I do like some of the details here, like using the special sticker piece using Kohl's element for the sidecar there, so it's not too bad. But obviously, I think one of the best vehicles that came from this split of the combination mech is the Kai mech right here. This is one of the only vehicles here that feels like it could be sold as a standalone LEGO set. Obviously there's some awkward bits and pieces to it. The legs are very chunky for the build itself, but it honestly feels like a pretty solid standard LEGO mech with a lot of reinforcement for the leg pieces themselves. In fact, if you look at the upper arms, this is literally a color swap of Lloyd's Hydro Mech from the previous wave of Seabound. It's using the exact same building technique, the hands work the exact same way, it's literally using the same sword technique as well. This is basically just the same arms from the Hydro Mech, which, to be completely honest, were not my favorite arms. I was not a really big fan of how they actually did the upper arms there. It just feels a little bit too spindly for me, but honestly, I do wish that LEGO would come up with some sort of new pieces for that, because they definitely could have some room for improvement there. Rotating the mech around, I'm legitimately impressed by the amount of detail they actually managed to pack in the back. They really didn't need to because, again, when the mech is combined, you don't even see the back of this piece because Jay's jet covers it. But honestly, I'm very happy with how this looks. And it even has some semblance of a knee joint. It absolutely isn't intentional. It's really just kind of a cheat from when you actually have to transform it to add the Zayn vehicle on. You have to split the knee in half, but it kind of works and you can get it in a walking pose. So hey, extra free knee joint with no friction in case you wanted it for this mech itself, which thankfully can actually hold a pose. With that though, we can now move on to the final vehicle of the combination mech, This is Zayn's, well, I'm not really sure what this is. Is it a snow plow, some sort of armored tank? Guys, help me out in the comments, what do you think this vehicle is? It has treads, so it is some sort of a snow-based vehicle, which does fit the Zayn minifigure and character being the Ninja of Ice, but to be honest, I don't really know what to make of this. It feels just a little bit awkward where the set designers were probably just trying to figure out, well, what exactly can we do with the feet and still make it Zayn and Ice themed? And honestly, I'm impressed they even managed to make it somewhat Ice themed at all. This clearly is some sort of an Ice Lego vehicle with maybe a snowplow at the front, so I'm pretty happy that they actually managed to work that into the build itself, although again, this is probably the weakest build out of all the assemblies here, and I'm not just a big fan of how this one looks in general. That being said, the concept of a ninja combination mech is so cool, a very Power Rangers, Voltron-esque type of mech, and I really wish that LEGO will do more stuff like this in the future, continue to experiment with combining different bits and pieces to form a much bigger whole, because this is such a cool set. It's so fun to convert them from different vehicles, larger and smaller, and I'm very happy every ninja gets representation in this set, at least the 4 core ones. Now do a 6 ninja combo mech LEGO, I dare you. Moving onwards though, we have the final set from the Ninjago 2022 wave. This is set number 71767, Ninja Dojo Temple, retailing for $100 US and coming with nearly 1,400 pieces. First off, I want to take a look at some of these smaller pieces here first. And those are the minifigures. Why, may I ask, do Kai and Nia get hair pieces, but Kohl and Lloyd do not? Feels very strange to me. I really wanted that Kohl hairpiece. But again, let's just kind of move the minifigs off the side because we already looked at them before and start by focusing on some of these smaller side builds. First of all, we have what basically is just Kai's Evo Mech. It's literally a very identical build to the Zayn Evo Mech, although thankfully, because the set has a higher age range, you actually get a lot more detail packed into the Kai mech. And you can actually see this is an example of one of the most heavily detailed mini mechs they can actually do for Ninjago. Featuring some fun technical feet detail, you've also got the fingers mounted on the sides of the hand there, a little miniature sword for it to wield, as well as a really cool looking gun turret mounted on the side of the right arm here. It uses the newer version of the stud shooter as well as the lightsaber hilt piece to form some very good and somewhat realistic looking Lego machine gun like builds, which is just a really cool thing to have mounted on the Kai vehicle itself. It also comes with the exclusive banner for the monastery or dojo here, which is cool to get. Now the Serpentine Vehicle here is some sort of a battering ram-esque vehicle. Yeah, I guess it's better than the previous small-scale Serpentine Vehicle we looked at, where at least this one I understand the concept behind it. It actually has a pretty interesting shape canted forwards at an angle there, so I think that's pretty fun. And this is made to directly interface with the temple itself with a bit of a play feature. You can really just ram this guy into the side wall, push it forwards, and the way it's supposed to work is that the studs will now fall from this platform up above. It's a little bit finicky if you don't actually have it fully attached correctly like I had, but it's made to actually simulate rubble falling down on top of the vehicle, which is kind of a cool feature. It's really interesting seeing the wall smashing feature actually have little mini Lego studs fall on the heads of the invaders, so that's just a cool feature to have in general. Moving on to the main build for the Dojo Temple itself though, this is an absolutely fantastic Ninjago Monastery-like build, which is one of the best Ninjago classic temple location-based sets that they've done in honestly a while. We've gotten so used to getting completely unique location builds for Ninjago that, if you think back, the last standard monastery-like temple build we got like this was all the way back in 2019 with the Legacy Monastery. This is pretty different and includes some fantastic studs on the side building for the top stairway here. Really love the detail and the rock work there. Almost feels like a mock, but still built in a way that's very easy to understand. The red doors are very striking against the temple itself, and I really do like that there's a bit of an Easter egg here inside one of the vases. You can see a donut hiding inside. I don't know why I like that Easter egg so much, it's just something I found kind of funny while building the set itself. Moving onwards though, there's actually a good amount of detail packed within the inside of this model as well. In addition to featuring a fantastically beautiful dark green roof with the black and gold highlights, as well as some lantern pieces with the pumpkins recolored in red to represent the lanterns, as well as a nice balcony piece on the side here, you can see that as we rotate this around the back, there's actually good amounts of space for the ninja to actually be posed around. We've got a weapons rack here with a nice sticker, as well as one of my favorite stickers in the set, which is a translation to our alphabet to compare the Ninjago symbol or the Ninjargon symbol language there, which is really cool. Down here we have a bit of a hint of the Pixels Samurai X cave here, a technological hideaway tucked deep within the temple showcasing the Mech, Pixel herself, and a bit of an advertisement for a Ninjago-style video game featuring, strangely enough, Akita mounted on the cover, which is the first time we've seen her since Season 11 Secrets of the Forbidden Spinjitzu as well. This back here is a rack to hold the ninja hoods when you have their hair displayed, but again, I will ask, there's 4 studs there to mount 4 different hoods, but only 2 hair pieces included. Lego, what's going on with that? Anyways, moving up to the top, we have a portrait of Master Wu, which is really fun to see, with the golden Lloyd Dao sword sprinkled throughout the sides of it, as well as just some nice decorative stickers scattered throughout. One thing I really do like is a very small detail, but you actually have a coffee cup being spilled over this newspaper. Just kind of a funny detail I like to see there, plus another one of the collectible Ninjago minifigure scale trading cards depicting Master Wu. All in all, this is probably one of my favorite builds of the wave. It's just a absolutely stunning Japanese-inspired temple with some really great inspired designs and a return to form for Ninjago temples. Oh, and there's more, because they use a great parts usage of the roller coaster element for this bit of a training grounds area for Nia to actually train with putting out the fires, which are mounted just very loosely on the torches here. As you can see there, there's a bit of a bucket where you can hold Nia's water blasts. All you need to do is actually have her flick the power blast to knock over the flame pieces, which makes for a good play area and also something very realistic for Nia to actually be practicing her training moves in the dojo itself. All in all, I think $100 is a great price for the set. While the prices for this range have been somewhat questionable for the EVO sets, this one, again, is not an EVO set, and that really makes it feel like an absolutely fantastic return to form for the Ninjago builds. I'm very happy with this flagship set for the January 1st, 2022 wave, and all in all, I'm certainly excited to see what comes next for Ninjago. This wave as a whole has been a very interesting one, and one that is very, very controversial to a lot of die-hard Ninjago fans. In fact, a lot of the die-hard Ninjago fans who probably are teens or adults have chosen not to purchase a lot of the sets from this wave because, understandably, they're not really the target audience. Again, most of the sets we looked at earlier in this wave are for the EVO lineup, which is made to draw in new kids for the 5+ age range. Only sets like these are really made to draw in some of the older collectors, and even still, sets like these are made to actually just introduce kids to the concept of building Ninjago temples, or mechs or dragons. All in all, while this Ninjago CORE wave got a lot of flack from hardcore fans when it was first launched, I am actually pretty happy that LEGO is trying to bring new fans into the Ninjago theme. It represents an investment in the theme to make sure it lasts for many, many years beyond today, and ensures that younger audiences will actually have their first introduction to Ninjago without having to be bogged down by 14 seasons worth of lore. I think this is something that is absolutely fantastic, that definitely is something they should have done with older LEGO themes like, say, Bionicle, having some sort of jumping off point for new fans to just understand the basic concepts of what makes Ninjago Ninjago is a really good thing to do. And I'm generally happy with this trend of LEGO introducing new kids to the theme in the first half of the year, and then maybe allowing the story to get more mature and evolve a lot further in the second half of the year, which is something that has been promised by Tommy Anderson, the showrunner for the Ninjago series. If I had to complain about something, I probably would complain about the distribution of the focus for this wave. Jay gets 2 vehicles, Lloyd gets 3, Kai gets 2, Zayn gets 1, and unless you count the Ultra Combination Mech, Kohl and Nia do not get any vehicles of their own. And honestly, I kind of wish that they actually chose to spread out the distribution of sets a little bit more. Instead of making the $20 Lightning Dragon a Jay set, maybe make it an Earth Dragon for Kohl. That being said, I do really appreciate how easy they made it to get multiple copies of all the ninja characters just by buying a few of the sets, ensuring that kids will definitely be able to easily get their favorite characters without having to spend too much.
Alright, and with that we have summed up my personal thoughts on this latest core wave of Ninjago. A few surprises, a few things that I was a little bit disappointed by, but also a lot of things that I really did end up liking a lot more than originally thought. Let me know down in the comments below, of course, what do you think of this wave? Do you like it? Do you dislike it? And do you own any of the sets? And if so, which are your favorite sets? Thank you all so much for tuning in to Duck Bricks, and stay tuned and subscribe for even more LEGO news, reviews, discussion, and analyses coming your way very soon. I'll talk to you again later, and bye-bye for now.